Tala Nantan ran across the red sands of the Dakari's frontier, her bare feet sinking into the warm, shifting dunes. The twin suns burned low in the sky, casting long shadows that seemed to chase her as much as the drones behind her did. She had been running for days, surviving on nothing but the scraps she could find in abandoned shelters and the bitter water she could filter from desert plants. Every muscle in her body ached, every breath was a struggle, but she did not stop. She could not. Humanity depended on it, or at least what remained of it. The Combine had hunted humans for centuries. They saw them as flawed, unpredictable, weak. Most had been captured, experimented on, or destroyed. Tala was the last known human in the Outer Rim. They had tried to sterilize her, to erase her, but she had escaped. And now, for the first time in her life, she felt the sting of freedom mixed with the terror of being utterly alone. Ahead, the dunes fell away to a small settlement of metal spires and domed shelters. Smoke rose from the chimneys, and the faint hum of machinery whispered of life inside. Tala slowed, keeping low, her eyes scanning for patrols. She had learned quickly that the Dakari's drones could see almost everything, but they were slower and predictable. She had a plan. The settlement belonged to Commander Arkul, a warlord known across the frontier for his strength and cruelty. No human had ever entered his territory and lived to tell the tale. Tala did not know if she would survive, but she knew she had to try. There was no other option. As she crept closer, she saw the patrols, sleek reptilian soldiers moving with precision. Tala flattened herself against a dune, holding her breath as the patrol passed. Every nerve screamed in fear, but she forced herself to stay calm. Her ancestors had survived worse. Her mother's stories of the old world, of Apache resilience, filled her mind. They had survived because they never gave up, and she would not give up either. She waited until night fell, when the patrols would thin, and then she moved. Every step was careful, measured. She avoided the bright lights of the outpost and slipped through shadows, using the terrain to her advantage. Her small frame allowed her to squeeze through openings too narrow for the soldiers. She could feel the heat from the furnaces inside the settlement, smell the metallic tang of machinery, and hear the faint buzz of energy grids. When she reached the outer wall, she paused. The metal was smooth and cold beneath her hands. She studied it for a moment, then began to climb, using small protrusions as footholds. Her fingers burned against the metal, but she did not stop. Finally, she reached the top and dropped silently on the other side. Inside the settlement, she moved like a shadow. Her senses were sharp. She could hear the hum of the generators, the whispers of the soldiers in the corridors, and the soft clicks of automated systems. She avoided the main halls, sticking to maintenance tunnels and storage rooms. She scavenged what she could: a piece of dried protein, a water filter, and a worn cloak that would hide her from sensors. It was not much, but it was enough. Tala had survived worse. She had always survived. She knew she could not hide forever. The Combine would send more patrols, and sooner or later they would find her. She needed a plan, not just to survive, but to strike back. She had seen the Combine's technology, their energy grids, their AI-controlled weapons. She had watched them manipulate and enslave countless species, and yet she knew humans were not gone because they were weak. They survived because they were clever, adaptable, and unyielding. Her opportunity came sooner than she expected. She was examining a maintenance panel when a group of soldiers rounded the corner. Tala froze, her heart pounding. They stopped, scanning the room. She held her breath, pressed herself against the wall, and waited. The soldiers passed, unaware of her presence. She exhaled slowly. That night, she approached the central chamber where Commander Arkul held court. She had observed him from the shadows for days. He was taller than any human, with scales that shimmered under the artificial lights and eyes that seemed to pierce everything. He commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Tala knew confronting him would be dangerous, but she had no other choice. When she was finally brought before him, she dropped to her knees, her hands trembling. "I am Tala Nantan," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I am the last human. I ask for mercy." The commander studied her, his head tilting slightly. "Mercy?" He hissed, his voice like gravel. "You are nothing but a weak creature, a mistake. Why should I spare you?" Tala's heart raced, but she did not look away. "Because I can offer you something no one else can," she said. "I can wash your feet. I can be your mate and give you offspring. Let me live, and I will show you what it means to build, not obey." The chamber erupted in laughter. The soldiers exchanged puzzled glances. The words were madness. But Arkul's eyes narrowed. There was curiosity there, something unfamiliar. He had never seen a human before, never considered their value beyond labor or food. Tala's words were audacious, but they carried truth. "You are bold," he said finally, "and perhaps foolish. But I am intrigued. You will live, for now. Prove yourself." Tala nodded, relief washing over her, but she did not smile. Survival was not enough. She had to learn, adapt, and prepare. She began to work alongside the soldiers, repairing machinery, learning the language, understanding their technology. She watched, memorized, and planned. Months passed. Tala became indispensable. She knew their routines, their weaknesses, their patterns. She learned to manipulate the energy grid subtly, creating minor glitches that no one noticed but which gave her insight into their systems. She learned to speak their language fluently, to read their codes, to anticipate their moves. And all the while, she prepared for the moment when she could strike. Humanity's legacy was not just to survive, but to endure, to rise. Tala knew she carried that legacy in her veins. Then one day the opportunity came. A sandstorm unlike any before swept across the frontier, disrupting the settlement's sensors and blinding the patrols. Tala had prepared for this moment. She moved quickly, using the storm to her advantage. She accessed the central control systems, her fingers flying over the alien interface, overriding the AI protocols she had studied for months. The settlement's lights flickered and died. Alarms blared. The drones froze. And then from the AI's speakers, a voice spoke, one that sounded eerily like Tala's own. "You wanted to understand humanity," the voice said. "Here is lesson 1. We learn fast." The soldiers panicked, unsure what was happening. Arkul's eyes widened in shock. Tala watched from the shadows, her heart steady. This was only the beginning. Humanity had returned, and it would not kneel again. As the storm raged outside, Tala disappeared into the tunnels, leaving chaos behind. She knew the Combine would come for her, but she no longer feared them. She was ready. She would show them the strength, the cunning, and the indomitable spirit of humans. And so, in the heart of the Dakari's frontier, the last human began her rebellion. The storm raged for hours, sand and wind battering the Dakari's frontier outpost. Inside, chaos reigned. The drones had stopped moving. The soldiers were confused, and alarms screamed without meaning. And through it all, Tala moved like a shadow, her mind sharp, her purpose clear. She had spent months studying the systems, learning every routine, every protocol. Now that knowledge became her weapon. She did not need brute strength. She had human ingenuity, and it was more powerful than any alien technology. The first step was to secure the communication nodes. Tala's fingers flew over the controls, overriding the security protocols. A broadcast began, faint at first, then stronger, cutting across the outer rim's frequencies. Her voice, steady and calm, spoke in the universal code she had learned from intercepted messages. "Humans are not extinct. We survive. We endure. We will rise." The words spread like fire. Ships on distant moons picked them up. Hybrid species enslaved on other worlds heard them. It was a spark in the darkness, a reminder that even the smallest, most fragile human could ignite change. Inside the outpost, Commander Arkul stormed into the central chamber, his scales bristling with anger. "What is happening?" he demanded. Soldiers tried to explain, but the words fell short. Their systems were failing, their AI confused. The voice of a human, a single human, had turned their machines against them. Tala did not answer him. She moved with purpose, shutting down the main energy grid in specific sectors, creating confusion and panic. Drones that had once chased her now froze or moved in strange, erratic patterns. She had trained them without them knowing it, learned their routines, and now she controlled them. Arkul's soldiers tried to regain control, but Tala had anticipated every move. Her mind worked faster than the AI, faster than the reptilian soldiers could think. She used the outpost's defenses against them, turning walls into barriers, activating traps that had been dormant for decades. Fear spread among the soldiers. They had never seen anything like this. A single human taking control of what they believed was unbreakable technology. The warlord's eyes narrowed. He realized that this was more than rebellion. It was revolution. He approached Tala directly, scales shimmering under the dim emergency lights. "You are clever," he hissed, "but cleverness alone will not save you." Tala looked up, her voice calm but firm. "I do not need to be saved. I need to survive, and to show you that survival does not require obedience. Humanity adapts, learns, and grows. That is why we endure. The storm outside began to wane, but the chaos inside the outpost was just beginning. Tala moved from room to room, freeing enslaved workers she had hidden in the shadows, giving them simple instructions. Together, they began to take control, shutting down security systems, releasing locked doors and spreading the human signal further. In the mess hall, Arkul confronted her again. You are only one. How do you hope to fight the Combine? Tala smiled faintly. I am not one, she said. I am the last human. But you are many, and yet you follow rules. You fear change. That is your weakness. With that, she pressed a sequence on the console she had prepared for weeks. The AI systems that once obeyed Arkul now followed her commands. Turrets turned inward. Doors opened at her signal and energy barriers flickered in strange patterns. Soldiers panicked, turning on each other in confusion. Arkul roared in frustration, but Tala did not flinch. She moved to the command console, her fingers flying across controls she barely understood fully, adapting as she went. She had learned faster than the machines could. That was the human advantage: unpredictability, intuition, and the ability to act where logic alone failed. The outpost was in turmoil. Tala had expected the Combine to respond quickly, but she had also prepared for it. Using the communication grids, she sent encrypted signals to rebel cells on nearby moons and planets. Small fleets of ships began to move, coordinating attacks she could not even imagine, all in response to a single human voice. Arkul, now realizing he had underestimated her, attempted to flee to the upper levels of the command tower. Tala anticipated this and activated the defense drones in his path. They did not kill, but they blocked, surrounded, and herded him like an animal. She was teaching him a lesson in restraint and in humility. You think this is strength? Tala called to him. No. True strength is to build, to protect, to endure. You have forgotten that. The warlord hesitated. For the first time in his life he felt fear. Not the fear of battle, but the fear of understanding. He saw the humans he had dismissed as weak, now controlling what he could not. He saw the enslaved workers freed by her, their courage growing with every passing moment. He saw how one small, determined individual could ignite change across the stars. Tala did not wait for him to act. She moved to the central bridge where the main systems controlled the energy grids for the entire frontier. With careful precision, she adjusted the outputs, creating safe zones for the escaping workers and rebels, while cutting off areas that had been loyal to Arkul. The outpost was no longer his, and it belonged to the people, guided by human cunning. Hours passed. Slowly, the tide turned completely. The Combine's control faltered as the signal of human rebellion spread further and further. Ships in orbit, once under strict command, began to divert, unsure of who or what was truly in charge. On distant moons, hybrid species rose in revolt, inspired by the signal Tala had broadcast. Humanity's presence, thought lost, was returning stronger than ever. Finally, Arkul stood before her, exhausted, defeated. He was not dead and he had not been killed, but he was forced to kneel not out of fear but understanding. Tala looked at him, her gaze steady and unwavering. You will learn respect, she said, not because I demand it, but because you have seen what survival truly means. The warlord nodded slowly. For the first time he realized that humans were not weak, not fragile, and not easily broken. They endured through courage, cleverness, and a refusal to surrender. Tala stepped outside the control room, watching as the workers and rebels organized themselves, taking control of their own lives for the first time. Ships prepared to leave, carrying messages of freedom to other worlds. The frontier was alive with change. When asked by those around her what would come next, Tala smiled. We rebuild, she said simply. We create a home where no one kneels unless it is to plant something. That is the way of humanity, not to dominate but to endure, to protect, and to rise. The frontier was quiet now, but it was not empty. It was filled with life, with hope, with the beginning of a new era. Tala had shown that even the smallest human facing the greatest odds could change the universe. The message of humanity was simple and clear. We endure, we adapt, we rise. And so, the legend of Tala Nantan, the last human, spread across the stars. Her courage inspired countless others. Her ingenuity saved lives, and her spirit reminded all species that the human race was far from gone. It was not power, size, or strength that defined humanity. It was the will to survive, to fight, and to build a future against impossible odds. Centuries later, the outpost became a hub for human and hybrid communities, a place where freedom was protected, and where the story of one woman's courage became the foundation of a new human legacy. Humanity had returned not with armies or weapons, but with heart, mind, and unbreakable spirit. Tala looked out over the settlement, feeling the wind on her face. The suns dipped low on the horizon, and for the first time in years she allowed herself to rest. She had survived, she had won, and she had ensured that humanity, no matter how small or endangered, would endure. And in the quiet of the desert under the fading light, one human voice whispered across the stars, "We are here. We are alive. We will rise."